Welcome in, Packer fans, to another edition of the Pack a Day Podcast YouTube edition. If you haven't done so already, make sure you take a second now to go ahead and click subscribe on the Pack a Day Podcast YouTube channel to get a notification every time one of our videos goes live. And guess what? That means every single day. We have videos every single day. We have the podcast every single day. It's Dan Kotnik and Gage Bridgford here with you again, getting you ready for another Packer Sunday. Talked with you last week or to get you ready for the Seahawks game. Talking this week, Gage, a bit more important, Minnesota Vikings. We're in Minnesota today.
Mm-hmm.
First divisional game feels like forever. I know the Bears game was only a couple weeks ago.
It feels like it's been a month. Honestly, it feels like it's been.
It might be close to a month.
And honestly, am I crazy to say that the Green Bay doesn't have a good rival right now in the NFC at least? Because I don't think the Vikings are that good. I just don't. Green Bay has largely dominated this matchup recently. I heard someone say on a podcast yesterday that Green Bay had lost like 4 of the last 5 or something like that in Minnesota or something. And I'm like, okay, so one of those, I know Rodgers had a broken collarbone in the game. I'm like, I don't know where you're coming up with this stuff. There was the tie game from the Clay Matthews stuff, and then there was Seattle was the rivalry, and Green Bay has won, I believe, now 5 of the last 6 games there. There's like the Chicago aspect and the divisional part for Minnesota, but it's not. Green Bay doesn't really have a rival, and Minnesota was like one of the last ones, and I just don't think they're a legitimate contender anymore to really bother Green Bay.
Yeah, I think it's hard because it's all about how you want to define the term rival or rivalry.
I determine a rival in like you can have a good game, or you like when in my mind I'm thinking it's a good game and you have a chance that you might win, versus just you happen to play them and you don't like each other. Like Green Bay and Minnesota don't like each other. Green Bay and Chicago don't like each other. Green Bay and Detroit don't.
Right,
but. Like Green Bay and Seattle at the beginning part of the decade, that was a rivalry. That was every time this game was these two teams met, it was 2 teams that didn't like each other. It was going to be a good game every time. There was never going to be a massive blowout one way or another, and that's how it was going to be pretty much every single year. And I just don't think that Green Bay has one of those right now on a team that like they play every year. That I think the matchup can legitimately go one way or the other. I think rivalry games are all pretty one-sided.
Minnesota is probably the closest one to that because, like, think about that's been the only NFC North team to beat Matt LaFleur. So in the Matt LaFleur era, like that's really the biggest threat you have in the NFC. And now, with the game today, the way that the schedule plays out and the way that the records stand right now, this is like the biggest game. Packers Vikings under the Matt LaFleur era, you could argue, because with the way things sit right now, if the Packers win this game, they almost all but wrap up the NFC North conversation. If the Vikings pull this one out, then it actually becomes a bit of a conversation of what's going to happen later on down the season in that January 2nd game. The second to last week of the season in Lambeau becomes much, much more important in terms of the NFC North race. So I think if you have to pick anybody, it's the Vikings, at least the most consistently, because you can throw out there the Bucks, just from last year into this year, maybe the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers games are, obviously Green Bay has now won the last 2, but the 2 prior to that, they got stomped into the ground by Raheem Mostert. And then obviously there was the Colin Kaepernick stuff earlier in the decade where Kaepernick obviously massacred Green Bay in back-to-back playoff trips. But it's tough to – I think Minnesota is a team that has talent, but they've continued to fall off over the last few years. I don't think Mike Zimmer's that good of a coach. I'm really hoping he gets another extension. Same thing goes for Matt Nagy. Green Bay has the best coach in the division right now.
Yeah.
And I think Detroit has the second best. I don't think Zimmer's good.
Really?
Okay, look at it this way. How many offensive coordinators has Mike Zimmer had?
Yeah.
Like a new one every year. And he's got Clint Kubiak now. I think Kubiak's gone at the end of the year. And Kubiak only got the job because his dad worked for Zimmer at one point. That's not a shot at Kubiak's qualifications. That's just no one else wanted to work for this guy.
Yeah, at a certain point, he's run off offensive coordinators.
He forced, wasn't it Norv Turner? He forced him to retire, and then Norv came out of retirement to go coach somewhere else. I'm looking at Zimmer, and he just consistently underwhelms. Dan Campbell, his quotes and his conversations and everything else in his press conferences are interesting, but at least guys want to play for him, minus Jared Goff.
Yeah, well.
Detroit fights every single week outside of their loss to Philadelphia. But they fight. He is a coach that gets his players to show up even when they're outmatched, and he gets them to try. Zimmer's guys, like he and his quarterback can't stand each other. They sit there and they fight. They shove each other in the middle of games that they win. I'm like, you don't see teams falling apart like that when they're winning. That is a we're losing thing. And you sit here and you got Kirk and Zimmer fighting each other on the sideline at the end of a win. So I just think Zimmer's overrated as a coach. I think that people are relying on the run that Minnesota had in the playoffs a few years ago, and he doesn't really have that anymore. And LaFleur's just head and shoulders above everybody else, and everyone's going to continue to overlook him and say, oh, well, he's only good because he's got Aaron Rodgers. All right, sure, go ahead. That's fine. If that's what you legitimately think, you just told me that you don't watch Green Bay football.
I will say, over the past, you could probably call it 5+ years or so now, the Vikings have been the game out of the NFC North that I circle the most as kind of the important ones, because the Lions games, the Lions have never been good. They've never been competitive. There's been years where they trend upwards a little bit more, and they can kind of catch you if you're sleeping. Like 2019, squeaked out 2 wins against them when that shouldn't have been that.
Wasn't one of those games the Mason Crosby 5 field goal games? Or didn't he miss 3 extra points and 2 field goals in one game or something like that?
Yeah. Like the Vikings games, the Bears, same thing. Like they had the 1 year where they were the number 1 seed and you had double doink. But outside of that, it's been pretty mediocre. The Vikings, though, have had Dalvin Cook for several years now. They've been able to put something together with Kirk Cousins. Is it the best? No, but with Kirk Cousins and Case Keenum, they've been able to at least do kind of something. It just seems like every time it's Vikings week, that's the one that worries me the most out of any of the other teams in the NFC North, because that seems to be the one that they can always catch you if you don't come to play 100%.
The Vikings do have some talent. I'm not going to deny that. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, both Thielen's a little long in the tooth, but he's still a talented wideout. Same thing goes for Jefferson, who's one of the best young wide receivers in the league. I didn't enjoy it. With him being on the Vikings last year, it really sucked because I loved him in the pre-draft process, and having to watch him be good for Minnesota. I'm like, you couldn't have gone anywhere else, because I'm like, I want you to be good. I loved him as a wide receiver prospect. I had him as the 3rd wide receiver in that class behind Judy and Lamb. And kid's talented. Dalvin Cook, like you said, great player. You got Eric Hendricks and Anthony Barr on defense, and Eric Hendricks has been the best linebacker in this matchup for the last several years. It's just unfortunate that today that his streak of that ends because Devontae Campbell's on the field. Exactly. Shout out Perry Goldstein for that one.
Yeah. So let's talk about the game today a little bit, break it down. Starting with the injury side of things. The Packers obviously still without David Bakhtiari. He has still not made his return back to the active or to the
practice field.
To the practice field, to the starting role. Aaron Jones also again out. We knew that coming in. The one that kind of surprised us going through the week was Malik Taylor getting hurt and going to be out for this game today too. And really that, like we talked about last week, that really almost only hurts special teams.
We don't talk about special teams here. We don't talk about special teams here. Special teams doesn't exist. Just somebody tell Greg Joseph, just kick it out of the back of the end zone every single kickoff, and will be actually better idea. Just never let the opponent score, and then you don't have to worry about kickoffs. Boom.
That's right.
Big brain. large brains here on the Pack a Day podcast. That's what you did last week. Seattle only kicked off one time, and you're good.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
But with that, Malik Taylor, a wide receiver, out, and it also looks like Allen Lazard, doubtful for today's game, so he probably doesn't go today. So the corresponding moves from the Packers on Saturday, activating Juwan Winfrey and Ladarius Hamilton, 2 wide receivers from the practice squad. So again, we talked last week. It was the first time that we've had a full complement of the healthy wide receiving core last week against Seattle. And now we're right back to without Allen Lazard and without probably your most valuable wide receiver on the special teams side of things, because he was really, he actually, that game against Seattle had flashes of some really good things on the return game. That's been one of the key areas in the special teams. As terrible as so many different parts were, return was a particular one. Some muffed punts, muffed kicks, but he actually was starting to show some life. And so Malik Taylor again out today. That'll cause some issues.
That hurts, but that's the nice thing about having Juwan Winfrey.
Right,
Winfrey's another special teams guy. I don't know as much about Hamilton, but I know Winfrey's been a special teams guy. That's what he does, and that's what he's going to be in today. That's my presumptive who's going to be returning kicks today will be Winfrey. Right, so that's my guess. So. Winfrey, yeah. And then I'm not sure who will. I think Amari Rodgers is the other guy next to him, so those will probably be who you have back there. I think the main thing will be like the gunner role. Yeah. To see, because obviously that was kind of Taylor's thing, was being a gunner on punts, and as long as Winfrey can hold that down, I have some confidence that this group can continue to be good. In terms of special teams areas that I'm not concerned about, punting is one of the few. And a main reason for that is obviously the play of Corey Bojorquez, who's been just outstanding. Another feather in the cap of Brian Gutekunst for everybody that wants to bury him for the Rodgers stuff, which rightfully or wrongfully so. We'll get to that in a few months from now, but the Corey Bojorquez trade is turning out gangbusters. Yeah, he traded up he went for J.K. Scott in the draft. Didn't work out. I wanted it to work out. It didn't. He didn't lean too far, and he moved on from the mistake, and he got a guy who has played great all year long. There's been a couple of bad balls here and there, but that's just going to happen to any punter or to any player at any time. But other than that, he's doing a great job. He's getting the ball high to where there's not a big return. And that was something that they noted on the broadcast last week against Seattle, where he didn't always have the deepest hits, but he was hitting them high to where his gunners could get down there and get a fair catch done, because he's like, you know what? I'm not going to risk a big return. I'll just go ahead and now get it and then let the defense play. And it makes sense when your defense is playing as well as Green Bay's is right now. Don't force something. Don't try and force a special kick that lands right inside the 1 yard line when you can put him at the 17, 18 yard line and your defense will get a stop, because that's how their defense has been playing all year. So punting I'm not super concerned about. Still concerned about field goals and extra points, which until they manage to find a new right half of the blocking unit for that, I'll continue to be shaky. But I'm not super concerned about kickoffs, just especially in the modern NFL. There's just not a ton of them, and Mason Crosby is one of the few kickers who doesn't really get the ball into the end zone. I think Minnesota should, if they do score today, I think they'll probably get it to where we don't have a ton of hold our breath moments when Winfrey or whoever else is back there is receiving the kick.
Yeah. And so the other one to talk about, with Aaron Jones being out for today, means that the Packers are rolling with 2 active running backs on the roster, A.J. Dillon and Patrick Taylor. I mentioned this on a podcast earlier this week. It's a real shame. Just in general, it's a shame what happened to Kylan Hill a couple of weeks ago, that injury, because even for right now, just to have him roll out and see what you can do with a young guy like Kylan Hill would have been perfect. Now it's a 2 running back group. What do you think that this does to the offensive mindset? Because we've seen we've seen instances before, even when they had a 3 running back group back there. A guy goes down and Matt doesn't want to run the ball anymore. He doesn't want to risk losing another running back. Do you think that changes how they move into today? Does that worry you at all?
If we had a bad coach, it would. But here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Matt LaFleur. We've all seen, like, a lot of the time he tries to stay true to who he is. He likes to run his offense. He has a couple of creative plays here and there, but I want him to get a little mad scientist just a couple of times today. There's a couple of guys who Green Bay has that can do a little bit more than just line up in a traditional wide receiver role.
Amari Rodgers.
Look at you, Dan. Look at you. You're right there, man.
Simpatico,
right
baby.
Hey, Amari Rodgers, he hasn't really been too integrated in the offense this year. Makes sense. You're a rookie. You didn't get a ton of time with Aaron Rodgers in the offseason, and we all know Aaron Rodgers likes to have chemistry with his guys. And if he doesn't have chemistry with you, you know what? It might not be your fault, but guess what? You're not getting the damn ball. Sorry about you. It's just how it goes. It's how it's always been. It's how it was with Devontae. It's how it was with Cobb when he was a rookie. It's how it is. If he doesn't have chemistry with you, you're not going to get the ball. Get Amari Rodgers on the field. Line him up in the backfield maybe. You don't have to do it a ton. Line him up. Just get him a couple of snaps here and there. Give the defense and specifically the linebackers like Eric Kendricks, and because Eric Kendricks in coverage on a guy like A.J. Dillon and Patrick Taylor, that's a matchup you kind of lean towards Kendricks.
Right.
Eric Kendricks on Amari Rodgers, it's a little more 50-50. Amari Rodgers is gonna win some of those reps. Just give him some eye candy. Let him sprinkle across, go across, like let him go jet sweep, let him move the defense, let him get everybody thinking. Because that's what you can do when you have depth like this. Amari Rodgers is a guy you picked in the 3rd round, and he has been nothing more than a punt return. He's been a returner for you and a very occasional guy getting snaps on the field. And he's not even really getting touches. Let him get out there. Even if you don't give him touches, let him make the defense think, because and that's what I'm saying. Let LaFleur go into his bag, get a little mad sciencey with it. Maybe you put maybe you line Amari up as a single running back in a traditional like set behind Rodgers, single back set, and just so the defense is like, wait, is he running? Is he there's no way he's running, right? And then they're gonna go light box on you. Why? Because they got to spread out, because you got receivers everywhere, and then you got a light box and Amari Rodgers. He's a thick boy. I'm pretty sure he weighs like 210 pounds. He's only like 5'9", 5'10". He's not a big guy. He can run between the tackles a little bit. You're not going to run him like A.J. Dillon. You're not going to run him 10 times into the line, but if you give him one handoff, all of a sudden the next time he lines up in the backfield, that defense is going to be like, wait, hold on. We saw this. We saw him do this earlier. Let's go ahead and pay a little more attention. And that opens up space for everybody else. So I'm not telling him to go full-time Montgomery and start lining Amari Rodgers up in the backfield, but just get Rodgers on the field. Use your depth, especially now since you called up 2 different wide receivers who are both special teams guys. Maybe you move Amari Rodgers into the offense a little more this week. Save your running back, save A.J. Dillon, save your Patrick Taylors, and let Rodgers do what he can do in the receiving game. Or I think he could run the ball just a little, not a ton, but just get him involved in the offense, because then that adds wrinkles into your offense for January and hopefully February.
Yeah, this is the perfect game that you would want to add in a wrinkle, because that's when you're trying to do stuff that they've never seen before. Who knows you the best? It's your divisional opponents. They play you twice a year, every single year. They're watching your stuff more closely. They're paying more attention. They want to beat you, because it's a divisional game. It means a little bit more. Throw in that wrinkle of a guy like Amari Rodgers back there. Like imagine Aaron Rodgers in a shotgun with A.J. Dillon on one side and Amari Rodgers on the other.
Yeah.
How are you defending that? You want to go light box? Fine. A.J. Dillon will run it right down your throat. You want to go a little bit more heavy and bring pressure? Fine. Squirt Amari Rodgers out to the flat and dump it off for 5-10 yards. Like you said, it's time to, if like I said, if Kylan Hill isn't here to get these reps and get some experience at running back, and you're short at the running game, then why not give another rookie a couple more opportunities in an offense to throw something a little bit different at a divisional opponent. And maybe it does something to, like you said, if they win this game, it really locks up the division. If you can throw something new at the Vikings defense that they haven't seen before, and if it leads to helping a win, like that's worth every snap that Rodgers is out on the field there,
Exactly. That's entirely my thought. Is just he adds something new to the offense that you're not going to get from Patrick Taylor or AJ Dillon. You're just not going to get it from him. With Aaron Jones out this week, you got to be a little creative. Like you said, the divisional opponents have seen everything you got. There's not a lot you're going to be throwing at them this week that they're going to be like, oh, didn't see that coming. But guess what? They haven't seen you line up this rookie third-round wide receiver in the backfield as a running back. They've seen you do it with other guys, but they haven't seen you do it with this one. What are you going to do here? Think about it the way that they would use Tyler Ervin and then Tavon Austin a little bit last year.
Right.
They were like, it's something different. And that's when you can make the defenses think. All it takes is a split second, especially with a quarterback like Rodgers. All it takes is if you can get the defense off just a little bit, Rodgers can make them pay. And even if you don't do anything with Amari, even if he doesn't get a touch the entire game, if you have him out there just making the defense think and making them account for him, that's one less guy on defense that Rodgers has to be as concerned with. He's like, okay, somebody's going over there occupying Amari. I'm not actually going to give him the ball. But guess what? There's now space open because somebody else had to go occupy that guy. Like AJ Dillon, his ability to catch the passes out of the backfield this year has been a huge boon that I don't think anybody's really noticing. He's not Christian McCaffrey. He's not Alvin Kamara. He's not going to catch 100 balls.
He's not even really Jamal Williams.
He's not.
Yeah.
But guess what? Just him catching a little bit, all that does is make the defense think just a little bit longer. And sometimes that's all it takes. And you want to spell AJ Dillon and Patrick Taylor because I'm sure that Patrick Taylor will see a healthy workload this week. Get Amari Rodgers in there as well. Just add a little bit different flavor. Just add a little something out there just to really make the defense think a little bit more. And I think that this offense can really cause some problems today for a defense in the Vikings that's ranked 28th against the run by DVOA. That's a fun fact for those keeping track at home. That's the bottom 5. That is 5th worst. And so for every time you listen to go ahead, you go watch your big sports networks. I'm not giving any free promo here. You go watch your big sports network. They're going to say, oh, the Vikings, they're good at defense. They're good at stopping the run. Guess what? They're 28th against the run this year. They're bad. They're not good at stopping the run. Also, Michael Pierce is on injured reserve this week. So and Danielle Hunter also out for the season. They're two best linemen, two of the top 3, depending on where you put Dalvin Tomlinson, out. Green Bay can run the ball, and it doesn't matter if they run it with Dillon, Taylor, or with even Amari Rodgers. They're going to be able to find room to run the ball, and I think that Green Bay is going to be able to take advantage. And I just want to see LaFleur get a little creative this week, really get the creative juices going, especially with looking ahead to the Rams next week. You're probably not going to have Aaron Jones for that game.
Right. More
than likely, Green Bay is going to play it conservative. You're going to take Aaron Jones off this week and next week, and then he's got to bye the week after that. Give him plenty of time to be rehabbed, and rehabilitated, and be ready for December and be ready for that stretch run. So now is when you start, maybe add a wrinkle or two. Just add a couple of plays that you're like, you know what, we haven't tried this out yet. Let's try it out now, see how it goes, and then we'll move on and we'll deposit that for later. And we'll be like, what are they? What's the thing they've been saying lately? Lucas Patrick was the mental receipts or the. That like just a little mental receipt, because now next time you play the Minnesota, they're going to be like, oh wait, we saw Amari in the backfield. We got to pay attention to that.
Right.
And even if we're not going to do anything, it just makes you think.
Yeah. Now we do need to talk about the other Rodgers a little bit, the Aaron Rodgers.
Who?
Because Aaron Rodgers, the GOAT.
Who? Oh, that
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
that guy, yeah, the sheep fella, yeah, got him.
Yeah. Has not practiced. I think I saw.
Who cares?
I think I saw since before the Washington game.
Actually, he was a limited participant on Friday.
Okay, so has a little bit. So here's my thing. We still have no idea what the hell this toe thing is.
It happens.
But I know it happens, but it's, last week when we talked about the Seahawks game, we talked about how what is Aaron Rodgers going to look like coming off of COVID, getting over that, not having practice time, and it didn't look super great, and now he has another full week where talking about some of these different wrinkles and stuff like that. He probably, if anything is getting thrown in there, he hasn't run any reps probably with it. He's very limited. So it's another game going into now a hostile environment in Minnesota where we still are a little kind of up in the air of how fully healthy is Aaron Rodgers? What kind of level are we going to get from him? Because I think if you get close to what we got last week, especially in the first half, I'm not sure. Like this game becomes a little bit more of a toss-up than I think some people, especially some Packer people, might like to admit.
All right. Well, a few things real quick. Green Bay's defense is good.
Yeah.
They're hashtag good at football. I know that's the hard-hitting analysis everybody's come here for today. 2, A.J. Dillon, he can run the ball really well, especially against this defense that can't stop the run. So even if Aaron Rodgers isn't perfect, as he wasn't last week, Green Bay can run the ball, as they did last week. So those a couple of things I'm not super worried about. Another thing, so you said maybe he hasn't really worked some of the plays in. Maybe he doesn't have reps. I will say LaFleur seems like the type of guy to break out some of the exotic stuff months and months ago. Like maybe back in training camp when Rodgers finally reported. Is it possible that he's breaking out something completely brand new because he's like, oh, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon will never both be hurt. I don't have to worry about this. No, LaFleur's a smart guy.
Right.
Even if he just like once a week, he'd say, all right, Aaron, we're going to put Amari in for this series. We're going to have him run out of the backfield and do some stuff like that. Let's just get it just so that way we have that for later on. Let's just see how it looks, see how it kind of fits. Now, is it possible it's brand new? Maybe. But Aaron Rodgers is also a 3-time MVP. I have confidence that even if he has no practice with it, he will know roughly what's going on. He's been around the block a couple of times. Also, there was a couple of years ago, he didn't practice for like 6 months or whatever, however long he had that calf injury. He just basically never practiced. And it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, DNPs, and then Saturday, yep, Rodgers going this week. And we're like, all right, cool, moving on. So even if he is limited, he was only a limited participant on Friday, which who knows how limited or how much he did, how limited he's going to be with this toe injury. I think that they know they don't have to rush him through practice because they know there's no point. It's not an injury. He's not a guy that you need him to be out there, especially with Jordan Love. You have a guy that's good enough to help you get through everything. And so that's why I'm not super concerned because Kurt Benkert can run the scout team this week because it's Kirk Cousins. You don't have to I could go run the scout team. If we really needed to, I could go do it to replicate Kirk Cousins. I can't quite throw it as far, but other than that, I can pretty much replicate it.
Well, I'm giving some credit here to the Minnesota Vikings. I know they remind me a lot of what Seattle wanted to do last week, just at a better version of it. You have a much better running back in Dalvin Cook this week.
Fair.
And I think you could argue that the wide receiving tandem of Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen against DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, toss up. Maybe you favor Seattle like a little bit more.
I go Seattle there because I still think that Lockett is better than Thielen, although Lockett and Thielen are kind of like they're perfect for the quarterback that they're with.
Right.
Like Lockett and his ability to go catch the moon ball is perfect for just like Thielen is perfect for Cousins. And then ultimately there I would go like Metcalf versus Jefferson. I love Justin Jefferson. Metcalf gets the nod, but it's really close. You're right. You're right. It is kind of a toss-up.
And you've got Tyler Conklin there. So like this offense it's better than Seattle. So I'm not trying to take away from what this defense can do and has shown pretty much every single week now that they can limit really good offenses. But at the same time, again, it's a divisional game. It's the best quarterback in this division outside of Aaron Rodgers, starting quarterback. Justin Fields will probably get there soon, but Kirk Cousins.
Are you just slandering Tim Boyle, Detroit Lions starting quarterback? And
that's fair.
Andy's gonna have your job.
That's fair. That's fair.
But when he
and
edits
doing
this,
it on his podcast network.
Yeah, no, I'm letting him know that I get the new Dan Kotnik spot. This is great.
But what I'm saying is you can't expect a 17-0 win every single week, and especially to go out and only score 3 points in one half of football. I just don't think you can't replicate that formula again this week. And so you need Aaron Rodgers to be back to form. I don't think he was on form last week.
You're right. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not going to sit here and say that Aaron was an MVP level quarterback last week. He wasn't. You're right. He was the best quarterback in that game, but that wasn't that hard because Russell Wilson was terrible.
Yeah,
it was awful. I'm just not concerned about Rodgers because this goes back to a couple of years ago when people started saying, you know what, maybe Rodgers fell off, maybe he's lost a step, and then he went out last year and he torched the league and won an MVP. Rodgers hasn't been that guy this year, but also he hasn't needed to be that guy. That his defense consistently shows up every week. He can be a little off. He can get a little experimental with it. Because, think about how many balls he's thrown this year where you're like, Aaron, you didn't really need to throw that one. You could have just let that one go. Like the ball in the end zone last week. You could make the argument maybe he was trying to throw it away, but he had the defender on it, which kind of held him up. He threw that ball because he had confidence in his defense and their ability to get a stop because they've been getting stops, and they've been getting a lot of stops. Every time he goes up to the podium or does any interview anywhere, he can't heap the praise on the defense enough, and rightfully so, because I think for the first time in 12 years, he's like, holy shit, this is fantastic. I got a defense out here that can help me, and I don't have to play Superman. I don't have to play perfect football. It's the same argument that anybody that ever goes after Rodgers in the playoffs says, oh, he chokes. He can't win the big one. It's always his fault. And it's like, go look at the defenses he's had and go look at the average amount of points. I looked at this. The average points given up in a Green Bay Packers loss in the playoffs under Aaron Rodgers is like 34 or 35. In their wins, not even close. Not even close. I believe it's like 18 to 19, somewhere in that range. Rodgers has a defense that is playing well. I think that Kenny Clark is going to have a really good game. Garrett Bradbury's back. Garrett Bradbury's in the lineup this week. I know Kenny Clark's licking his chops, and I can only imagine that he's in the locker room with TJ Slayton saying, hey, we're going to have a good day. TJ, how do you know? Just trust me, man. I've had this guy's number since he came in the league 3 years ago. He doesn't like playing me. I love playing against him. This guy got me my contract extension. It's fantastic. You're going to have a good day. So I think that Green Bay's defense is going to get after Kirk Cousins in the pocket. And with Devondre Campbell, I think the Green Bay is able to contain Kirk when he does scramble because Kirk's a little athletic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to use the term sneaky athletic because that's obviously the stereotypical cliche term. But but I mean he is. He does not look like a guy that's going to be athletic, but he can scamper here and there and get out. So I'm just not afraid of this Minnesota team. I've watched a lot of Minnesota games this year. I don't think they're that good. And if they are, it's because they got out of their own way, and I don't think they can consistently do that. Last week, they got out of their own way, had a good game, got a win. But guess what? They're playing the Chargers, who treat Justin Herbert like he can't throw the ball further than 10 yards. So they played a team that can't get out of their own way. I don't think Minnesota can do that. I'm not super concerned about anybody on this defense anymore, especially at the cornerback position. I think Devontae Adams is going to be 7'11", going to be wide open all day long. And that's just – I think I'm sure that's just overconfidence and that's just homer bias. And if so, that's okay with me. I'm okay with being a biased Packer fan. Guess what? This is the Pack a Day podcast. I'm going to be biased talking about the Packers. But until I see Minnesota consistently put it together week after week, I'm not going to be concerned. Who's Minnesota beaten this year? That's an objectively good team.
Well, here's the thing with Minnesota, because you kind of brought it up with the Lions and how they're always fighting. The Vikings have had several games this year where they are in it right to the end and lose very close games. And so that's a team that worries me, that because it's unpredictable. We don't know what Vikings team we're going to kind of get, and it might be the one that can come out and punch you in the mouth real quick right off the bat. And
that's right. The Vikings are the only team to have held a 7-point or more lead in every single game this year. No other team in the league has done that. They've done that in every single game this year. They've had at least a 7-point lead at one point or another. Great so you're right there. And that is the most random stat of all time. And I'm like, of course it's Minnesota. It's not your Arizona Cardinals that are 8-2. It's not Green Bay. It's not any of these teams. It's the Minnesota Vikings, who I believe are 4-5, 4-6, something like that. 4-5. Yeah. Cool. Great. You've beaten Seattle, Detroit. Who are their other 2 wins? Los Angeles Chargers, and then
Chargers.
Did they play Chicago?
I think so.
Okay. So cool. But, you beat 4 teams that have, and I'm pretty sure 3 of the 4 have losing records.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. It's not all, quarterbacks, not win-loss isn't a thing. The team, I don't think win-loss is, look at, if I can hit a little closer home for a lot of our viewers, I'm sure, look at Nebraska, Wisconsin last night. Nebraska loses a lot of really close games, arguably could have won a couple games against teams just like Wisconsin that are ranked fairly high, or I should say were ranked very high, but they could have beat Minnesota, arguably had a chance to beat Ohio State. They came out and played, they played these games that are really close. The Vikings remind me a lot of that, is that the win-loss record for me doesn't mean a lot for the Vikings here in terms of how I view them, because like I said, they're just one of these teams that has just enough to be able to put it together for just a random 60 minutes.
They hang around. You're right. They lost to Cooper Rush on primetime football. It's fine.
Right. They're gonna hang around, and so that's all that worries me. I'm not expecting Aaron Rodgers to come out here and throw 4 touchdowns for 400 yards to go out and win a game in a shootout.
It'd be pretty damn good, though.
It would be pretty great.
I wouldn't mind seeing Aaron Rodgers throw 404. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah. But it just worries the Vikings game. It worries me today a little bit. Gage, let's start wrapping this up a little bit. Let's go with key to the game for today's game. You can go offense or defense, either side, or whoever on the Packers today. Key for the game today, and then also a score prediction before we wrap up.
Key for the game is the corners. I'm not as concerned about Dalvin Cook as I usually am in this matchup, and that's because the front 4 or the front 3, whatever, for Green Bay, and obviously Rashawn Gary is questionable as of our recording this Saturday night. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to see if he plays. If he's out, that obviously affects the team a ton. But I like Oren Burks. I like Devondre Campbell. I like Preston Smith and how that front is played. But for me, the key is the corners. We've already talked up Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. I love Justin Jefferson, the player. I love watching him play. But I hope that Eric Stokes is matched up with him all day long, because I think that is a great matchup. And I can guarantee, and I know for a fact that 3 months ago, I was not like, man, I can't wait for that Justin Jefferson, Eric Stokes matchup in late November. I was excited for the Jair Alexander, Justin Jefferson matchup, but that's how good this young rookie is. He was all over Tyler Lockett last week. He was like a wet blanket on him. It was so fun to watch, because it's like, we have a rookie corner who is playing not all pro football, but he's playing pretty damn good. And Kevin King has been number 1 by Pro Football Focus's grade since week 5 or week 6, I believe it was. And this is a guy that everybody was pissed off about when they brought him back for $6 million this offseason. Was it maybe a little expensive? Sure. Guess what? It's done. And he's playing pretty damn good football. Rasul Douglas is going out there and playing outstanding football. If they can go out and keep close to these wide receivers, maybe you don't shut them down. You're probably not going to, because that's not how it works. You don't get to hold 2 really talented wide receivers to less than 30 yards in back-to-back weeks. You just don't do that. But if you can stay close to him long enough, I think that Kenny Clark and the rest of this front can really get after Kirk inside, because the interior offensive line for the Vikings still lacks talent, still is inconsistent. Garrett Bradbury is still not a very good center. Sorry. That's just the facts. Bradbury may be good in 15 games this year, but he is not good against Green Bay. I don't know what it is. I don't know if Kenny just is talking smack to him right before the snap and he just gets in his head all game long. I don't know what it is. But in this matchup, Kenny Clark plays like Aaron Donald and like the best defensive tackle of all time because he has Garrett Bradbury's number. And so as long as Stokes and King and Douglas can stay close to their assignments just long enough, you maybe don't hold it up pressure for like 5 seconds, but just stay close and let the front do their job. And I think Green Bay can have a really, really good game on defense.
And score prediction?
Score prediction. Okay, I'm going to go with the same one that I gave on the the audio podcast today, 24-17. And I don't think the score is going to be as close as that would make you think. I think it's going to be a late score Minnesota thing where they get a late score to make it look like it's a one possession game, but really it's the like Green Bay is just dominated all day long, and then they give up a late field goal or late touchdown or whatever. They're just like, oh. Yeah, look at that. Minnesota stayed within one score. Green Bay. No, they weren't really within one score. It just looks like they were within one score.
Yeah. I love, first off, I absolutely agree with everything you just said, especially the corners, because I think that's my number one key for this game is if you can do that, I trust Kenny Clark and that front seven to be able to at least limit Dalvin Cook. You're probably not going to completely shut him down.
Agreed.
But limit him,
mm-hmm.
And the only way you're going to be able to do that is with the cornerbacks being able to do their stuff on their own, If I had to pick another one, though, for me, I think it has to be the running backs. It has to be the running backs because you need to be able to get a lot of chunk plays in the running game with them today. Like you said, they're one of the worst running defenses in the league. And, we've seen this a couple times now where Matt does tend to, at times, will give up on the run a little too early.
I agree there. If Green Bay gets down too much, he's like, nope, no more running the ball. It's like, right, calm down.
And Minnesota hit in the past, like how many matchups we've seen the past couple of years, Minnesota gives up big runs. They give up big chunk plays on the ground. This is an opportunity for A.J. Dillon and Patrick Taylor to really make some noise. If you can run the ball in those big chunk plays like that, not just 5 yards, 4 yards here, which are great. That works. I would never complain about that. It does the exact same thing. But there's something a little bit extra about big 15-yard, 20-yard plus runs that kind of they sneak into a defense's mind a little bit more, when they're thinking about trying to stop the run. And I think that really opens up the offense. If the running game can stay consistent, get some big stuff by themselves without, needing to do it in chunk plays, some big stuff here. There's a big opportunity for A.J. Dillon and Patrick Taylor today. And so I hope that those two have a huge game. I expect A.J. Dillon especially. I think this is going to be – this could be for the league. I think this could be the A.J. Dillon coming out party.
Wasn't Packer that Tennessee last year?
I still think that was kind of just a little head turn like, oh, A.J. Dillon, okay, that's interesting. Their third string running back.
Fair enough. I mean, it was just like because he did it against Tennessee. He did it against Derrick Henry. Yeah, right. He did Derrick Henry stuff against Derrick Henry. That was more.
I think if you now this is the A.J. Dillon show. This is why you're here. You are why we let Jamal Williams walk because we trusted you to be a number one level running back. And so if you can come out here and you have an explosive day like I think he's primed to do. This could be the situation where, on a national scale, A.J. Dillon sort of has this coming out party, and he starts to get a little bit more recognition on a more general nationwide scale than I think maybe he tends to get now. As for a score prediction, you went pretty darn close to what I was going to say. I think it's definitely within one score. I was going to go 23-20. I think it's real close. I think that there's a bit of a Mason Crosby redemption game today too, a little bit. I think that we still see this offense sputter a little bit at times, and so there's going to be more chances for him today. You're kicking indoors. Have a little get right game. 23-20, Packers win. Again, like you say, it could be not as close as the score predicts, but I think it is still going to stay within one score for probably most of the game. If not, it probably stays within at least a 10-point window most of the game.
That's fair, because I mean, as we've seen, Green Bay doesn't necessarily blow teams out. They may have games that like turn out to be a blowout by the final score, but they're not blowing them out by just running up the score. They're not putting up 50 on the Jets like the Patriots did a few weeks ago. They're running the ball, they're dominating you all game long, which is like what they did against Seattle last week. They didn't necessarily put up a huge total of points, but that game wasn't close. Outside of it was close for the first half, sure, but other than that, Green Bay was just constantly just dogging Seattle all day, all game long. So I agree. They keep scores close because they run the ball really well and they try and have long, methodical drives. That's why they haven't scored in the first quarter in like 8 or 9 of their 10 games this year. So yeah, I agree. I think that the one score call is a good one. That's kind of where I was at there. Was I think it ends one score. Green Bay's offense, they're going to have that game.
Right.
I just don't know when that game is going to come, because they had it against San Francisco for a little bit. They had it against Detroit for a little bit. There's going to be one of those games this year where they just, every single thing clicks and they do that Rodgers 400 yards and 4 touchdowns scorched earth game. I just don't know when it's going to be.
Yeah. All right. That wraps up our pregame here on the Pack a Day podcast. Gage, do you want to let people know where they can find you and any kind of final thoughts on today's game?
I think Green Bay is going to win the game. But you can find me on Twitter at @GBridgford NFL. Still doing content for Rotoballer, Dynasty Nerds, Denver Stiffs. All of my stuff's on my Twitter. I'm doing, actually, if you're watching this video right now, I'm probably doing fantasy advice from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern, right up until the 1 p.m. kickoff. So any fantasy questions, start sits, whatever that you may have for me, you can send them my way. And Go Pack Go is all I got for you.
Perfect. You can follow me on Twitter at DK all the way. Do some stuff for Game On Wisconsin every Wednesday, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern on Wednesdays for Lombardi's Bar, our YouTube show over there. Speaking of YouTube, again, if you have not done so, make sure you subscribe to the Pack a Day Podcast YouTube channel so you get the notification every time the video goes up every single day. Follow us over on Twitter at Pack a Day Podcast, and of course, follow the podcast as well if you are not doing that. There is no content machine pumping out more Packers content than Andy Herman and all of our crew here at the Pack a Day Podcast. So again, for Gage, for Andy, for myself, Dan, enjoy today's game, everybody. Until next time, go Pack Go.